Have you ever wondered what really makes someone become a killer? What if I told you that it is not violence that defines him, but the need for order in a chaotic world? Dexter Morgan is not just a cold man. He is living proof that traumas can shape extraordinary talents and silent monsters. Imagine living with a secret code that no one understands, but that dictates every step of your life. In the midst of it all, he forces us to ask, how far would you go to impose your own justice? Today, we are going to dive into Dexter's mind and discover how pain, precision, and obsession intertwine in ways you never imagined. But before that, if you are a fan of cinema, psychology, and want to understand the mind behind your favorite character, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any video. Dexter Morgan is not just an ordinary forensic investigator. At first glance, he seems like the typical, meticulous, organized guy, always with his impeccable uniform and his cold notes about crime scenes. But behind that exterior, there exists a mind that works like a Swiss watch, calculating, almost clinical. The way he observes the world and people is fascinating but also frightening. Have you noticed how some people can hide secrets beneath an impeccable routine? Since he was little, Dexter learned to survive by observing what no one else saw. His childhood was marked by events that shaped him deeply, and this ability to analyze every detail became his greatest weapon. He has an internal code, a thin line between right and wrong that only he can see. It is as if there were two Dexters coexisting, the socially acceptable one and the dark one that no one knows. That makes you question how well we really know someone, does it not? His charm is not explicit, it is silent, subtle, almost hypnotic. When he speaks, his words carry weight effortlessly, and it is easy to be swept away by what he says. Dexter understands body language, what people hide in glances and gestures, and uses that to his advantage. This ability creates an aura of control that is both fascinating and disconcerting. Imagine living with someone who notices every nuance you try to hide, despite his apparent coldness. Dexter is not a monster without feelings. He developed his own ways of dealing with emotions, building walls that protect and isolate his true nature. He observes life from the outside, always analyzing, rarely allowing himself to feel fully. It is as if empathy were a selective tool used only when convenient. And then the question arises, does he feel less, or did he just learn to hide it better? He is a perfectionist by nature, and that is reflected in everything he does. Every detail, every piece of evidence, every calculated movement is part of a ritual that maintains his internal balance. Dexter does not improvise. He plans, reflects, and This relentless pursuit of precision is fascinating to watch, but it also reveals a mind that needs absolute control not to lose its way. Have you ever thought what it would be like to live with someone so meticulous? Dexter also possesses his own sense of justice, which challenges any conventional morality. He is drawn to what he considers absolute evil, and that attraction defines his choices and actions. For him, punishing those who deserve it is almost a vital necessity, something that fills an internal void. This distorted view of justice makes us question how far ethical boundaries can be flexible. And you, have you ever wondered if you would do the same in extreme situations? Even in his social interactions, Dexter maintains a strategic distance. He can be charming, funny, and even empathetic, but always measuring every step. It is as if he were constantly rehearsing a play, where the audience never notices the truth. This ability makes him a master of subtle manipulation, but also someone eternally lonely. After all, anyone who gets too close runs the risk of discovering his dark side. And it is precisely this duality that keeps us hooked on Dexter's story. A man who lives in two worlds, apparently normal, but carrying within him a secret code and a silent obsession with justice. This complexity is what keeps us on the edge of our seats, always wanting to find out how far he will go and what he will do next. Little do we know that the traumas that shaped Dexter are only the beginning of the journey. Dexter's childhood was marked by a tragedy that no human being should have to face. He witnessed the brutal death of his mother at a very young age, an event that not only traumatized him but shaped his entire perception of right and wrong. That experience engraved a pattern in him. The world can be cruel, and often justice needs to be done by one's own means. Imagine growing up with that awareness, learning early that life is not fair. Beyond the initial trauma, Dexter developed a constant internal struggle with his own emotions. He feels, but not in the conventional way. His rational mind always tries to control what the heart feels. This silent battle generates isolation, turning him into an observer of the world rather than a participant. For many, it would be impossible to understand how someone can be so close and yet so distant at the same time. Another deep conflict is the feeling of social alienation. Dexter is an outsider by nature, someone who cannot fully fit into social norms or common relationships. He observes humanity as if it were a case study, absorbing details that no one notices. This distance creates both protection and loneliness, an invisible trap that keeps him safe but eternally alone. Dexter also faces a constant moral duality. He is both victim and judge, policeman and killer, operating within a personal code that only he understands. That thin line between right and wrong is fascinating and anguishing at the same time. It is like walking a tightrope without a safety net, always calculating each step, knowing that a misstep can be fatal. Dexter's desire for justice becomes an emotional burden. Every action he takes carries an invisible psychological cost, and the need to punish the guilty is at once liberating and oppressive. He feels guilt even when he acts according to his code, because part of him knows that the world does not approve of his choices. This internal tension keeps his story intense and unpredictable. Traumas of abandonment and loss also appear in his adult life. Dexter seeks connections, but always fears getting too close. Each relationship is measured, analyzed, and often sabotaged by the fear that someone will discover his true nature. This self-imposition creates a cycle of isolation that feeds his darker side. The constant struggle with his own identity is another striking internal conflict. Dexter questions who he really is, whether he is defined by his pain, by his code, or by who he wants to be. This deep questioning is almost philosophical, a silent battle that no one sees but that shapes every decision he makes. And that permanent doubt leaves viewers intrigued, always waiting for the next move. And it is precisely this tangle of traumas that explains Dexter's complexity. Each loss, each feeling of alienation, and each moral battle contribute to the construction of a character who is as fascinating as he is disturbing. But these internal conflicts are not the end of the story. They are the fuel that feeds his choices and his next steps. Dexter's traumas not only marked him, they shaped the way he sees the world and interacts with it. Each loss, each pain turned into an invisible code that guides his actions. It is as if he had built an internal armor, using pain to protect himself and at the same time to define what he considers just. Imagine living with a moral map that only you can read. The death of his mother taught him the importance of control. He learned early that the unpredictability of the world can be deadly, and so every movement he makes is calculated. This search for order and precision is reflected in every detail of his life, from the way he analyzes crime scenes to how he interacts with others. For Dexter, control is not just a choice, it is a vital necessity. The constant emotional conflict turned Dexter into someone almost clinical in the way he processes feelings. He feels, but through an analytical lens, as if he were observing himself. This ability allows him to maintain a facade of normality, but it also creates a silent distance from everyone around him. It is fascinating to realize how he can be so close and, at the same time, so distant from people. Social alienation made him a master of observation. He learns about people by analyzing small gestures, patterns of behavior, and inconsistencies. This ability becomes both an advantage and a curse, because it separates him from the real world, keeping him constantly in the role of spectator. Those who look from the outside may think Dexter is cold, but in reality, he is just extremely adapted to his own survival code. His moral duality is perhaps the factor that most shapes his choices. Dexter acts according to his personal code, but there is always tension between the law, ethics, and his own sense of justice. Each decision is carefully calculated, weighing risks and emotional rewards. That makes the viewer constantly wonder, is he a hero, a villain, or something completely different? The desire for justice turns into ritual. Each planned murder is a form of psychological relief, a way to maintain his internal balance. Dexter does not just kill, he follows patterns, leaves rituals, organizes evidence. This ritualistic behavior is a direct response to the traumas of his childhood, an attempt to impose order on the chaos that always surrounded him. The fear of deep connection influences his personal relationships. Dexter gets close to people, but always with invisible limits, as if he feared someone would discover his darker side. This precaution shapes his friendships, romances, and family relationships, creating a constant tension between the desire for closeness and the need for isolation. It is a cycle that defines him almost as much as his code, and so each trauma becomes a choice, and each choice strengthens the character we see on screen. Dexter is not just a calculating killer. He is the result of losses, pains, and internal conflicts that intertwine in a complex way. And even when we think we understand his mind, he surprises us, keeping us trapped in his narrative. Eager to find out what will come next, Dexter is not just calculating. He is meticulously strategic in everything he does. Every step is planned. Every movement is thought out to minimize risks and maximize results. This ability is born from a need to survive and the desire to keep his code intact. It is fascinating to observe how he transforms traumas into almost surgical precision. And have you ever thought what it would be like to live with that almost obsessive discipline? Dexter's morality is fluid but guided by clear principles: do not harm the innocent and punish those who deserve it. He creates rules that help him deal with the internal chaos, but that also isolate him from the world. This distorted personal ethic makes him unique and unpredictable. It is as if he lived on a thin line between hero and villain, always balancing his actions between justice and emotional need. Another striking trait is the ability to adapt emotionally to situations. Dexter can insert himself into any social context, interpret emotions, and manipulate perceptions. This emotional camouflage ability is the result of years of survival and self-analysis. It keeps him safe, but it also creates an invisible distance that few people can cross. His perfectionism does not stop at his profession or the murders. It extends to every detail of his personal life. Every interaction, every gesture, every choice is calculated with precision. This obsession with order is a direct reflection of the traumas of his childhood, a way to control the uncontrollable. It is as if perfection were the only refuge in an unpredictable world. Dexter also deals with the constant tension between desire and repression. He feels impulses, desires, curiosities, but rarely allows these feelings to escape unfiltered. This emotional repression keeps him functional, but it also feeds his darker side. It is fascinating to realize how the mind can create complex strategies to survive itself. Another dilemma is the need to keep secrets. Every intimate relationship, every friendship or romance involves risks, and Dexter calculates every step to protect his identity. This double life is exhausting, but he manages it with coldness and logic. However, it is precisely this secret that creates suspense and keeps the viewer hooked on his narrative. Even with all the coldness and planning, Dexter has moments of vulnerability that humanize him. He experiences guilt, empathy, and even love, but always filtered by his code. These moments reveal that behind the monster, there is a complex human trying to navigate a world that never fully understood him. This duality connects us and fascinates us, and it is precisely this complexity that keeps us hooked on Dexter's story. Each psychological trait, each moral dilemma, each strategic decision reveals layers of a character who is as meticulous as he is unpredictable. But even with all the precision, we know that nothing is definitive and that his next steps can surprise at any moment. So, what did you think of Dexter's mind? Can you understand how traumas, precision, and moral dilemmas shape each of his choices? Tell me in the comments which character you want me to analyze in the next video, because we will continue diving into this universe of complex minds. And if you do not want to miss any deep analysis like this, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you can keep learning about character psychology and better understand these fascinating stories that keep us hooked from beginning to end.